Hey everyone, thanks for your support in 2024. We have a lot of cool stuff coming in 2025, and here are some of the things you can look forward to as we move into next year. In the lead up to The Mandalorian and Grogu in 2026, we'll be starting a full series rewatch of both The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett on exploring hyperspace lanes beginning in October. You can also expect a rewatch of Andor, and we will have reviews of every episode of Andor and the rest of the Skeleton Crew as those come out. Josie will be returning as we continue to rank every Star Wars thing released ever. Reviews of every episode of every Marvel Disney Plus show, including Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, The Eyes of Wakanda, Wonder Man, Ironheart, Daredevil Born Again, and Marvel Zombies, the day after each episode releases, will be available on Beware of Spoilers. We'll be having special event podcasts on 30-minute reviews for the Academy Awards, our 2024 year in review in early January, ranking all of Phase 5 of the MCU after Fantastic Four First Steps comes out, and our 10th anniversary special. Once we complete our rankings of all the Pokemon games on the backlog files, we'll be moving on to Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. Over on the YouTube channel, you can join in for playthroughs of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, Pokemon White, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, Sonic Adventure 2, LEGO Racers 2, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, and SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Want to keep on top of all the new things we have coming? Subscribe at mwpnews.com, subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/@mwpnews, or subscribe to Beware of Spoilers, 30-minute reviews, exploring hyperspace lanes, and the backlog files on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thank you for your support. Good evening, and welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam. With the last episode, I think I put up the one for the penultimate episode of... I know I recorded it. Did I put it up? It's very possible that I didn't put it up, because the day I recorded it, my car shit the bed. I got off the highway as I was finishing recording it, and my car wouldn't go above first gear. So it was a very trying week and a half, or week or so, as I didn't have my car. But I have my car back now, so we're able to continue this. So I'm gonna pretend that I didn't put the episode up, because I'm thinking through, and I'm like, I don't think I ever actually did that. And I think that this would have probably worked better as a two-part finale, because I think the finale of Skeleton Crew is a bit underwhelming, considering what this show is. Like, this show is meant to be the story of these kids who get off on this adventure in space, and they have to, you know, they end up teaming up with this pirate and all that, and it turns out he just wants to get back to their home planet because it's one of the Old Republic mints. And it's one of those things that, like, it's a small nitpicky thing that has bothered me the entire way through this show, and I've said this, I feel like, every week. What's the value of the Old Republic mint? I'm sorry. Like, for a franchise that has gone so far out of its way to show the incongruence between, or that's probably the wrong word, whatever, the difference between how organized the Republic, the transition between the Republic and the Empire was, compared to the end of the war and the transition from the Empire to the New Republic. Like, something that they've done very well is show that difference. They show, like, a lot of what we have on Disney Plus is designed to kind of bridge the gap, you know, thematically, and explain why these things are different, and why it's so different that between these two times. Fundamentally, the issue is, like, when we get to the end of this show, it's like, okay, but, like, do Old Republic credits have any value? Like, is there anything for this? And I don't think the show does a good enough way to explain that, like, this has to be set during the New Republic era. This could have been a show that was set during, like, there's a way to make Jod a little bit more tragic. And that would have been not to set this where it is, but to set it, like, kind of in the immediate aftermath of the, set it in the immediate aftermath of the, of the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. Set it right there, around the time the Bad Batch takes place. And the reason I say that is because you could have this character who spends his life looking for AT-ATN, one of these Republic mints, and he wants the mint because he wants the money. And he's like, I will get this. And he finally gets there. And he finally gets what he wants. And that moment where they give the same thing, it's like, oh, we were told that all the Jedi were, we were told all the Jedi were traitors, and that was the last communication we got. And it's like, oh shit, like everything about that would land so much better if it's set there, or if it's set at the High Republic, like during the prequels. There's nothing about this show that works better. It actually works worse set where it is. And I think the other thing is too, it's like the end of the show resolution being like, and then we called the police, feels very weird. Like, because that's what it fundamentally is. It's about getting a message out to the New Republic. Like, and again, this is another example of a show where I feel like the most interesting part of this is coming next. Based on what we know from The Mandalorian about how we're kind of dealing with things, I would be very interested to know, how do the people of AT-ATN deal with this fundamental paradigm shift where it's like, you thought you were working for the Republic. Well, no, the Republic has not only gone, but the Republic has, it hasn't existed for decades at this point. We're looking at least 20 years since the fall of the Republic. And now a new Republic is here, and there's still a war going on, because there's still Imperial warlords. Like, there's a lot of really fertile ground for storytelling there. And I feel like that's the more interesting story. And I'm not saying every story that we have in every, in this needs to always tie back to some big overarching thing. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is, why set this in this period if we're not going to do something with this period? They don't do enough with this era to make this kind of worth setting it where it is. This should have been a High Republic era story. This should have been a prequel era story, and it's just not. And I think that is kind of the biggest disservice to it. As for what the kids do, because we don't get a falling action with the kids, that was the other really weird thing about this, is that the show ends, and it just kind of ends, which is the other really weird part of it, where it's like, so they obviously the resolution where the pirates get dispatched by the New Republic isn't the important thing. All right, fine, I get what you're saying, but that's not the important part of the story. The kids went on there, but at least give me some kind of thing where it's like the kids reacclimating to their new life, because that's kind of the key part of this. Give me something about where these kids are going. And I get that they're trying to set it, you can't do that if you're going to be getting a second season. That's the fundamental issue with this, where it's if you tell me where the kids go in the future, then you can't do a second season, because then you're beholden to that. But at the same time, this should not have ended the way it did, I don't think. I think that this is, the way this show ended is a fundamental disservice, and it's because you're hoping to get another season out of it. And I think that there's a lot here that kind of speaks to, there was an IGN article about this, where it's it talks about kind of how this show epitomizes a lot of the issues that kind of plague streaming television now, where a lot of the things that you would get from a regular series are not happening because it is, you know, you don't need to do a pilot anymore. You don't need to get people endeared to the characters out of day one because of a series like this. But doing that on a show will help you every time. And they're in kind of, like, they're not wrong about that. I don't think they're wrong about that. Like, and that would have helped this show a little bit too, because it's like, I wonder, like, the viewership numbers were not great on this show. Like the ratings came out, the ratings were not good. And let's just, acknowledge that. Like, if the ratings aren't good, the ratings aren't good. But at the same time, like, why were the ratings not good? I think is an interesting question that we need to ask ourselves. And I think the reason why, when we look at this show, we can say the ratings are not good. It's not because the Acolyte soured people on it, which is, number one, you ever notice that anytime there's a Star Wars thing where there's, like, a lead who's, like ostensibly the lead, he's a straight white guy, and then it bombs, it's never because the show itself is bad. It's because the previous thing that's quote-unquote woke soured people on it. Because that's the same thing we have here, where it's like, oh, well, the reason why people didn't like this is because, people didn't watch this because they were soured by the Acolyte. I would be interested to see what the downturn in viewership was from episode 1 on. And the other thing we have to consider is that the marketing spend on this show was not that high. Like, they did not do a lot with this show, and there wasn't quite the hype cycle around it that we have with the other shows, where it's being constantly talked about for years and years and years before it comes out. It's kind of like Skeleton Crew, and it's one of those things where it's like, even when me and Josie did our, predictions for this year, it's like, does it come out this year? And we were getting toward the end of the year, and it's like, I guess it's not coming out, and then they announced it like 2 months before it released. And I was like, oh, okay, so I guess we are getting it this year then. Like, it was a very weird situation all around. So, to sit here and blame, like, oh, people didn't like the Acolyte and then they sat this out, I would be curious about how many people watched the show. Like, watched the first episode and then dropped after the first episode. I think that's the biggest sin the show does, is that first episode is very weak. Like, it very much reminds me of the WandaVision premiere, where I'm like, if this is not in the MCU, I probably would have dropped after those first 2 episodes. Like, the dynamic that makes the show go is the dynamic between Jod and the kids. And we don't get Jod introduced formally until the end of the second episode. And the first episode, like, it takes most of the first episode to get the kids on the ship. And we want them in a place where they're on the ship. I do not care. And the show does not care either, as evidenced by where the show ends off. But the show doesn't care about the kids' personal lives on Ad-Atten. Like, that's not the important thing, because the important thing is the kids going on this adventure. And so spend all this time before we even get on the adventure where it's like, oh, and now they're going to do this, and now he's going to take a test and blow it off, and now he's going to do this, he's going to go off on his speeder bike, he's going to do this. Like, none of it matters. At the end of the day, none of that matters to this story. We don't need that. Like, you could have cut so much could have been trimmed out of that first episode. And episodes 1 and 2 could have been one episode. And that would have done so much more to endear the audience to these characters. That's what they should have done. But they didn't. And we end up with the situation that we're in right now. And I feel like that may have something to do with why the people didn't watch the show. It doesn't grab you. The point of a pilot is to introduce you to the characters, introduce you to the plot lines, and be like, will you give us a second chance? Because it's not, the pilot is not just for it's not just there to sell it to the executives. The pilot is there to sell it to the audience. You're there to prove to the audience that this show is worth giving a second chance. These are characters that you want to spend your week with. You want to spend the time watching it with them. Like, if you can't do that, then that's a problem. And that's where we end up with this show. And at the end of the day, it's not one that I'm going to revisit, and when I look through where I would put this compared to the others, I think this is a perfectly mid-tier Disney Plus show. Like, Disney Plus Star Wars show. Like, I wouldn't say it's better than The Mandalorian. I wouldn't say it's nowhere near better than Andor, but I wouldn't even say it's better than Ahsoka. Like, I would put this like above Book of Boba Fett. but really not above much else. And I think it's too. It's not like I get what they're going for here. I just don't think this is I think this was a failed experiment from them. I get what they're trying to do. I understand it, but like at the same time, like I think when you do an homage like they did here, you have to understand what you're homaging. If you don't understand what you're homaging and what it is about those things that worked, you're not homaging. It's the same when we talk about what AI does when it writes, when you use generative AI to write. Generative AI will look at things and be like, well, this did this, this did this, this did this, therefore I will also do this, because that's what all of these things that work did. And I don't even want to say generative AI. Let's use the idea of like, an early writer, an early screenwriter, an early novelist, something like that. They're going to look at a bunch of things they've read elsewhere and be like, well, this book did this screenplay did this TV show did this. I'm going to do that too, because that's how books work and that's how these things work. Okay, great. I get what you're going for. But it's not enough to see what does work. You have to see why it works. What is the surrounding thing around these moments in these books, in these movies, in these TV shows that make them work? And the issue with Skeleton Crew is it's very clearly playing on the Goonies. And it's an endearing cast. It is these kids that you enjoy spending your week with. You don't mind spending time with them. But then also it's like we also need there to be like real stakes, because like that's the thing too, is that like we're watching a Disney Plus show. There's no way any of these fucks are dying. Like there's a moment in the finale where KB is on the ship and they're like, oh my god, is KB gonna die? I'm like, no, KB's not gonna die. Like, there's no stakes to any of it. There's no way that and that's the big thing to this. And to an extent, that's kind of why I feel like this needed to do a better job of fitting into the wider universe, which it doesn't really do. It's this idea that, like, if you're in the wider universe, you can play with stakes beyond this show. What happens to the universe if Jod gets control of the Mint? Because we don't know the significance of the Mint, because it's so unclearly defined, what are we, like, how do we appraise that properly? Like, there's no way to do that if we don't know what the Mint is doing, or like, how it's working. Like, I understand, like, it makes sense in the context of the show why the Mint is continuing to run, and it's because the people on Ed Hatton don't know that the Republic has fallen. So, like, yeah, they got instructions, but there's nothing else beyond that really dictate how they're going to do things. At the same time, it's like, well, what do we do about everything going on here? Well, it's, we do what we're supposed to do by the Republic. The Republic hasn't sent us a message in a while saying anything's different. All right, we'll continue to do it. But, like, where's the money going? Who's using the money? Like, it's old Republic currency, and again, like I've said, like, does this have any value anywhere? It's like, if you brought marks into a bank in Germany, would you be able to use them, or francs into a bank in France, or lira into a bank in Italy? Would you be able to use them anywhere? Probably not. Like, I don't know for certain, but like, based on what they've said so far about the Star Wars galaxy, it doesn't seem like you'd need to, like, or be able to. It doesn't make sense for the show they're telling. And again, that's something that could have been very easily alleviated with one simple thing. Set it in the aftermath of the fall of the Republic. And then you have the Empire, he gets there and it's like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you want to do? There's no value in that anymore. The Republic doesn't exist anymore. Like, and then you get that from him. I feel like that would have been a much better way to handle this. That's a very simple change. Like, but you can't get X-Wings that way. But we'll wrap up there for today. We will be doing an Andor rewatch starting at the end of this month. And then we will be going through to the season 2 of Andor. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.